Part 80. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 791. Nicole operated a few buttons on the main console. The gates of a row of drainage pipes behind the castle facing the cliff slowly rose up, and a large group of mutated vampire bats flew out from inside. After these bats appeared, they hovered outside the cliff for a while, and then divided into dozens of small groups. Each team is led by a significantly larger bat. Dozens of bat teams flew in all directions and quickly disappeared into the vast forest. The eyes of the big bat leading the team flashed with a faint red light. At the same time, dozens of scenes in the forest appeared on the big screen in the castle's underground laboratory. The scenes seemed to be captured by flying monitors and kept moving. It's just that the clarity of the picture is very poor and the signal is intermittent. The road to signal sensing is still long. If we want to use genetic technology to transmit the vision of these bats back clearly and simultaneously, human beings' current technology is far from being able to do it, and for the time being, it can only be achieved through the innate ability to reflect sound waves. However, genetic technology is indeed miraculous. Once a breakthrough is made in this function, it will bring unlimited business opportunities, and human beings will also reach a new level. At this time, Nicole actually talked to herself about technology with interest. The door to the basement laboratory opened, and a group of heavily armed combatants rushed in from the outside. Seeing the headless body of Dr. Yuri lying on the ground, these people were stunned and immediately raised their guns and aimed at Nicole. The leader, one of the people, asked, "Miss Nicole, please explain what is going on." Without looking back, Nicole held a pale gold card between her two slender fingers, shook it, and said in a relaxed tone, "This is a special authority certificate issued to me by the committee, which can expediently handle the affairs of each branch." Locke took the card, walked up and handed it to the leading security captain. The captain quickly took the card from Locke, then quickly stepped back a few steps, keeping a safe distance from Locke, and then stood aside for a moment. He swiped his card into the machine for verification. After seeing the LV2 authority flashing on it, which was second only to the core members of the committee, the captain lowered his gun slightly. "But Miss Nicole, your authority is to handle branch affairs expeditiously." The captain glanced at the body of Dr. Yuri on the ground. Dr. Yuri is the manager of a stronghold, with authority second only to LV2, and he is still in the highest status research department among many types of departments. Besides, expedient handling does not mean that the managers of this department can be killed directly without reporting, right? Nicole turned around, showed a charming smile to the captain, opened her eyes wide, and nodded seriously, "Yes, I overstepped my authority." "Ah." Nicole said this, but the captain was speechless. Even if Nicole overstepped her authority, he, a person with only LV5 authority, would not be able to do anything to a person with LV2 authority. "Honey, you can either shoot me now, or shut up and do what you have to do, otherwise I don't mind overstepping my authority again," Nicole said. Locke grinned ferociously on the side, showing a mouthful of rotten teeth. The captain swallowed his saliva and shot the opponent. "Are you kidding? Unless authorized by a superior, if he really shoots or injures Nicole, the organization will definitely make him and his family pay a heavy price. On the contrary, if Nicole, a LV2 level, kills Dr. Yuri, a LV3 level, the committee might be furious and ask her to give a reasonable explanation, but if she kills a LV5 stronghold security director without even using her authority, no one will hold her accountable. In the organization, there is a strict hierarchy, and the authority level means everything. A LV5 stronghold security director is worse than a dog in front of the LV2 managers who are closest to the core layer. "I'm sorry, Miss Nicole." The captain finally put down his gun, waved his hand, and led the team members out of the underground laboratory. "Nicole, you are too polite to these guys, you should let me blow their heads off." Rotten Tooth Locke clenched his fists and said with a sinister smile. when will you grow some brains? Nicole didn't even look at Locke, looking at the big monitor screen expressionlessly. Not long after, a castle with faint blue light appeared on a monitor screen, like a gorgeous big diamond among the mountains. It seems that our friend is a rich guy. Nicole raised the corner of her mouth and showed a dangerous smile. How rich can he be? Is he richer than those guys in the organization? Locke muttered. By the way, I almost forgot if you didn't tell me. It seems we need to use the power of our friends to prevent the Russians from tracking down here, Nicole said. Major General Vanyev had been waiting in a side hall of the Kremlin all afternoon. If he hadn't been meeting with the president, he would have been angry as a soldier. The door was pushed open, and a secretary from the president's office walked in. Vanyev stood up suddenly, frowned and asked, "Can Mr. President see me?" "Mr. Director, I'm afraid the president won't be able to see you these days." "Why?" Vanyev asked. The secretary said, "Several large German financial groups want to visit our country temporarily to investigate the investment environment. As you know, the president has been troubled by economic problems, so he attaches great importance to this visit and is convening a think tank meeting. He may not have time during this period of time." "Not even an hour," Wagner frowned and said, "I have something very important." "Then I will ask again." The secretary left the side hall and came back soon, turning on a computer in the side hall. "Mr. Director, you have 20 minutes. The slightly tired face of President Vladimir appeared on the computer screen. He rubbed his temples and closed his eyes slightly and said, "What important thing?" "Do you still remember the 14th SS Division of Ukraine?" Major General Wagner quickly introduced the investigation of the Ukrainian bombing, and then added, "This division is said to be a certain kind of Nazi research." "Nazis, damn it, why after so many years, we are still troubled by the Nazi problem?" The president sighed for a long time. "Wagner, even at the beginning, there were only some circumstantial evidence that was not enough to prove the problem, and most of them were rumors. Even if it was true, it was nothing more than the bacteriological warfare of the Japanese Army's Unit 731. It has been so many years, and I don't want this reason to affect the next meeting with the German consortium." "But..." Major General Wagner was about to say something, but the president waved his hand to interrupt him. "Wagner, you must know that what our country needs most is economic development. I don't want my people to live in the so-called great power dream, but even a computer and a bar of soap have to be imported from foreign countries. No need to say more, let's put this matter aside for the time being. You can investigate secretly, but you are absolutely not allowed to cause trouble." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 792. After leaving the Kremlin, Vanyev got into the bulletproof car and said to the secretary in the front row, "Immediately retrieve the mobile force of the Bureau, and at the same time tell Moran International that we will pay close attention to their missing personnel. If you need funds and materials, as well as policy convenience, I will do my best to help." "Okay, Director." The secretary nodded and quickly made a few encrypted calls, but he was a little confused. The director's words, on the surface, fully support Moran International, but the subtext is already very clear. The Russian officials will no longer directly participate in the follow-up matters, and Moran International will handle it by itself, which is completely contrary to the director's original intention. Is this what the president meant? But this is not like the president's usual tough style. However, as a secretary, he is very clear about his responsibilities. He should not ask questions that he should not ask, and it is best not to think about things that he should not think about. After several phone calls were made, several powerful armed teams affiliated with the Russian government that were on standby in Ukraine quietly withdrew to Russia, and the huge investigation network also shifted its attention to other work. Only a part of the results of the previous investigation that could be seen was faxed to the Moran International headquarters. Without the support of the Russian government, Moran International is just a huge mercenary organization and no longer has the ability to coordinate across borders. May God bless Ludmila and her team members, a vice president of Moran International said somewhat helplessly. If the ladies are willing, we can go hunting in the mountains. Most animals are weak in the season and will venture out of the cave to store food for the winter. In the Abik castle, Avitu saw that a group of Orientals were quite interested in cold weapons, so he made a suggestion. Hunting is a common outdoor sport in Romania, and is deeply loved by men, women, old and young. However, for most Orientals, this kind of thing is just a thought. Although it is exciting, it is still a bit unbearable to kill a living animal with your own hands. Zhao Yun smiled and said that the older he got, the softer his heart became. Now he couldn't bear to kill a chicken. It was better not to take the children to see such bloody scenes. There was a special kennel in the castle, which used to raise hunting dogs and beasts. 8 big grey wolves lived in it, eager to try. For them, hunting was part of life. Su Ming simply opened the kennel and let these guys move freely. The wolves rushed out of the castle with great interest. Not long after, they heard the shrill wolf howls outside the castle. What's going on? Looking from the castle terrace, a dark cloud suddenly floated in the forest not far from the castle, and quickly approached the castle. The 8 big grey wolves ran back to the castle from the stone bridge as if they had seen a ghost. The cloud behind them chased them closely and got a little closer. Several people on the terrace saw clearly that it was not a cloud, but a large group of bats, vampire bats. Why are there these things again? Avitu frowned in confusion. Although there were traces of vampire bats in the mountains, they were rare in the past. He was responsible for maintaining the castle and had to go into the mountains many times every year. Even so, he had only encountered a few of them, and they were almost always alone. Why were the bats so active recently? When fighting desperately, you can see the strength of the 3 strongest adult wolves. They ran in the front, dragging the teammates behind them down 20 to 30 meters, and were the first to get into the castle. In the dark castle corridor, they howled at the wolves behind. At this time, the weakest wolf had just run to the middle of the stone bridge, and a big bat flapped its wings and glided from the air, and pounced on it. Buzz! The arrow was running at high speed in the vast space, not like the imagined whoosh sound, but it seemed to tear through the air, bringing a buzzing resonance. A black feather arrow cut through the sky, and it was the last to arrive first, and fiercely pierced through one of the bat's wings. The arrow was still powerful, and its huge inertia shot the bat off its original flight path and out of the range of the stone bridge. The bat was in mid-air, flapping its wings dejectedly, but one of its wings was seriously injured, and it could not fly normally with only the other wing. It crashed into the rock and fell crookedly into the rapids of the canyon below, and was washed away by the water. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the last wolf escaped from danger and rushed back to the castle. With a squeak, the castle gate slowly fell. There was a cheer on the terrace, and Su Ming gave a thumbs up to Su Meng, who was holding the bow, and smiled, "Well done." After the leading big bat was killed by Su Meng, the remaining bats did not retreat. They found a large group of food on the castle terrace not far away, and flapped their wings to fly to the terrace. This group of sudden vampire bats, except for scaring the big grey wolves, did not make Su Ming and his team too nervous. After all, there were only a few bats. Although they were a bit large and their blood-sucking characteristics sounded quite scary, everyone had arrows and guns now, so there was no need to worry about being hurt. Just as they said they wanted to hunt, a group of vampire bats came to them. Animals also have to be judged by their appearance. Su Ming and his friends were unwilling to kill ordinary animals, but they had no psychological burden at all to shoot such ugly and ferocious guys. The flying speed of the big bats was far from comparable to that of hawks and falcons. After spreading their wings in the air, the targets were particularly large, which made them good targets. The group of people who just learned to use bows and arrows can practice. Su Ming, Su Meng, and Zhao Yun each hold a longbow, bend the bow and shoot arrows randomly. The two women take Cheng Cheng, and the three share two crossbows. The strongest nurse Xiao Hu is responsible for loading the crossbows, and Cheng Cheng and Nangong Yan are responsible for shooting. Avito stood by the side with a double-barreled shotgun to prevent the bats caught in the net from rushing to the front and hurting people. The double-barreled shotgun fired shotguns. At close range, the bat with its wings spread out is about 1 square meter, and it can be hit with eyes closed. I hit it. Come on, come on. Almost, what a pity, I forgot to measure in advance. The group had a lot of fun. Feather arrows flew all over the terrace. From time to time, a big bat was hit by an arrow, like a kite with a broken string, crookedly falling in the air. The lucky ones fell on the stone bridge below and fell half to death. The unlucky ones fell directly into the mountain stream and canyon below like the first big bat and were washed away by the stream. Not long after, the last bat was shot in the head by Su Meng's arrow, and the whole sky became quiet. Yeah, Nangong Yan and Nurse Xiao Hu high-fived each other, and Cheng Cheng's face was red with excitement. This hunt was quite exciting. Avito, let's go down and clean up the battlefield, Su Ming pointed at several half-dead vampire bats that fell on the stone bridge and said. These guys are a little different from the vampire bats encountered in China. They seem to be out of control of mental power. If we catch a few alives, we may be able to study some clues. Just as he was about to leave the terrace, Avito's expression suddenly changed, pointing to the sky in the distance and exclaimed, God, what is that? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 793. Nicole, these bats are too weak, they are no different from ordinary beasts. In the underground laboratory, the rotten-toothed Han Lok looked at a surveillance screen with the screen turning into snowflakes, grinning and shaking his head. Nicole looked at the screen expressionlessly, but her fingers quickly operated the main console. Soon, all the dozens of bats on the monitor screen, led by the big bat in the lead, changed their flight direction and headed towards the monitor. The signal disappeared as we moved closer outside the castle. It doesn't matter, we have mastered the mutated gene of this mutated bat, and it is completely ready for mass production, Nicole said. It's so boring. Why don't you let the security guards capture the people in the castle, or I can do it myself. Locke grinned and clenched his fists, showing a violent gesture. I sometimes wonder if your IQ has passed the test. Nicole finally looked back at Locke, with a look of hatred for steel, and said, being attacked by a wild beast and being attacked by a group of fully armed warriors, these two, there is a difference. Do you want the Romanian government troops to search the mountains? As for you, Locke, don't think that you are invincible, you are just slightly more powerful than ordinary people. Is it just a little more powerful? Locke muttered in a low voice, I can tie with the brown bear. Okay, just stay by my side. This way you are safe and I am safe, Nicole said impatiently. Okay, it's all up to you. The strong man Locke could break marble with one punch, but in front of this woman who seemed to have no fighting ability, he was as obedient as a child. Let's see if the people in the castle will surprise us, haha, if they are really different, these people will not be killed by bats so easily. Who knows? Nicole, talk to yourself. On the terrace of Abic Castle, following Avito's finger, he suddenly noticed dark clouds one after another in the forest in front of the castle, surrounding the terrace. Everyone was dumbfounded, staring blankly at the approaching dark clouds. Zhao Yun, who had always been elegant, cursed, where did so many bats come from? Did they poke the bat nest? Maybe we just killed their parents, brothers, and sisters, and they came to take revenge. Su Ming's face darkened slightly. Hurry up, Avito, please take them all to the basement. Just now, a dozen bats did not pose a threat, but now it seems that the number of attacking bats is probably dozens of times that before. Hundreds or even thousands of large vampire bats with wingspans up to 1 meter are definitely a fatal threat. Especially when Su Ming's mental power seemed to have no effect on these bats. Then what should you do? Nangongyan asked, realizing there was a flaw in Su Ming's words. Su Ming and I stay in the tower. Su Ming pointed to a small tower next to the terrace. It was a tower used for defense. It was surrounded by solid rocks and was only 2.5 feet tall. It was a small square window. As long as people closed the door inside, they would not be attacked by bats. Su Ming said, "You go to the basement and hide. Su Ming and I will stay here to observe what's going on. Many animals are very vindictive, and killing one may attract a swarm of them, but bats are definitely not one of them." Su Ming was very surprised. Why did there appear such a large group of bats? Moreover, the basement is closed. If everyone retreats to the basement, no one will know what is happening outside. Nangongyan wanted to say something else, but Su Ming said decisively, "Obey, you all go down together and take good care of Cheng Cheng." "Okay, be careful." Nangongyan made up her mind and pulled Cheng Cheng towards the basement. Zhao Yun was about to speak, but Su Ming already knew what he was going to say and whispered, "There must be a man down there to take care of you." Zhao Yun immediately understood that with a man here, this group of women would be more courageous and have a backbone. More importantly, his side and the old Manawiatu were not familiar with each other. They had only known each other for 2 days, so they could guard against others. Heart is indispensable. Avitu, leave the guns with Su Ming and the others. "Let's go to the basement together," Zhao Yun said. Okay. Seeing so many vampire bats appearing, Avitu was so frightened that his legs became weak. He handed the double-barreled rifle to Su Ming, crossed himself on his chest with trembling hands, and kept saying, God bless, these damn devils, I hope they are just passing by." The group of people hurriedly left the terrace. Su Ming witnessed them retreating into the basement from the terrace. He snapped his fingers at Su Ming, and the two hurriedly got into the tower and closed the door behind them. They entered the tower with their front feet, and the bats arrived with their back feet. Several bats slammed into the tower door desperately, causing the wooden door to make a loud bang. In the blink of an eye, a large swarm of bats surrounded the castle, and a black cloud hovered over the castle, making piercing screams. Hundreds of bats flapped their wings randomly, making people upset. Fortunately, these guys are still just ordinary beasts and have not broken away from the category of bats. Whether they are hunting or finding their way, they all rely on sound wave reflection. After some bats hovered in the castle for a while, they did not find the ones hidden in the basement. Instead of a few people, they all gathered in the tower where Su Ming and Su Meng were hiding. The basement door is completely sealed after closing. Even if someone is found, the bat can't do anything. However, the tower is different. It can be easily exposed through 2 windows. Su Ming and Su Meng held a wooden board in each hand and blocked the windows as much as possible. Bang, 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 the sound of bats hitting each other kept coming from the gate and windows of the tower. Too abnormal, Su Ming leaned against the door, full of questions. Bats are social animals, especially this kind of mutant bats. It is very likely that the mutant bats in the whole forest are from the same group. It is understandable that such a large group of bats suddenly appeared. As for them coming towards the castle, maybe they were passing by, or maybe they were attracted by the bloody smell of the dead bats before. But now it seems that these bats seem to be attacking the castle with a purpose. When he was distracted for a while thinking about the problem, a big bat had already got in half of its body from the gap in the window, turned its head, and bit Su Ming's hand with a mouthful of teeth. Su Ming felt a slight pain on the back of his hand, and before the bat bit his hand, he subconsciously launched a burst of energy storage balls. His arm seemed to be covered with a thick layer of rhino skin. The bat didn't bite through it, but it refused to let go. Su Ming took the shotgun and smashed it backhanded. The butt of the gun smashed the bat's head against the wall into a bloody mess. No need to think too much, just kill these guys first. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 794. Dad, will my big brother and Uncle Su Meng be in danger up there? The basement was pitch black. Although we knew that bats search for targets through sound wave reflection, for safety reasons, the lights in the basement were not turned on. The basement was just below the central garden of the castle. Through the gap of a reprinted plate for entry and exit, a few weak rays of light shone down. Zhao Yun stood on the steps, squinting one eye and looking out, barely able to see part of the situation outside. In addition to Cheng Cheng, the other people were also very worried. Nangong and Nurse Xiaohu each found a short knife from the basement, holding it tightly, ready to rush out to save people at any time. Avaitua was very depressed. God, this is too unlucky. Even in the mountains of Romania, this kind of vampire bat is very rare. Why are there so many flying here today? If someone dies, not only will Avaitua's reputation be ruined, but the entire village's tourism industry will definitely suffer a huge impact. The dozens of people in the village mainly rely on the tourism industry to make a living. What should I do? Avaitua was so anxious that sweat broke out on his forehead. The Abik castle was located deep in the mountains, with no signal, and even asking for help was impossible. There will be no danger for the time being. Zhao Yun squinted and looked outside, and made a safe gesture to the people behind him, whispering, "The castle tower is very strong, they are safe hiding inside." What happened? Avaitua sighed. No one knew the strength of the tower better than him, especially the two corner towers where Su Ming and Su Meng were located. Even if an ordinary medieval catapult hit them, it might not be destroyed at once. This thing was originally a weapon for defense and attack. Unless these bats have the power of a large siege catapult, they can be safe as long as they hide in it and block the doors and windows. But the problem is that you can't stay in the basement and tower all the time. The basement is relatively better, with a larger space, and the tower is only less than 2 square meters, and both places have fatal problems, no water and food. Who knows when these bats will leave? When animals hunt, once they find their prey, they will hold on tightly. Let's wait a moment. Fortunately, we just had lunch. Zhao Yun was talking, and suddenly he leaned forward, stood on tiptoe, and whispered, "What are they going to do?" "What's wrong?" several people in the basement asked in unison. "These two bastards ran out of the tower." Zhao Yun's tone changed a little, "They are looking for death." Everyone in the basement was stunned. Hiding in the tower, with stone walls as cover, no matter how many bats there are and how fierce they are, to put it bluntly, they are just larger flying animals. It is impossible for them to hit the tower. Even the wooden door on the back of the tower is difficult to break through. People hiding inside are safe for the time being. But rushing out is completely different. They have to face hundreds of bats attacking from all directions. No matter how powerful Su Ming and Su Meng are, they are still human beings after all. How many bats can they kill with their 2 hands and 2 feet? The bats don't care about the code of conduct. They lined up and came up to fight one-on-one. What should we do? What should we do? Avaitua was so anxious that he turned around. "Let's go help them," said Nurse Xiaohu, holding a large wooden shield. Wait, at this time, Nangong Yan was the calmest and stopped Xiaohu. "I believe Su Ming. Since he took action, he must have his own ideas." "But..." Nurse Xiaohu wanted to say something, but Nangong Yan interrupted her decisively. "Think about it, since knowing Su Ming, when has he disappointed everyone? Is it true that every time when everyone thinks it is impossible, he can fight a beautiful battle? Besides, we can't beat the bats at all. Going out now will only distract them from taking care of us. It will not have any effect, but will hinder them. Yes, listen to Nangong, Zhao Yun said. Nangong Yan looked calm on the surface, but she was very nervous in her heart, fearing that Su Ming would have any accidents. But at this time, reason told her that rushing out would only cause trouble. The greatest support for Su Ming and Su Meng was to protect herself. I hope God bless us, and this time we can turn danger into safety like before. At the same time, outside the castle, Su Ming and Su Meng had already rushed out of the tower, leaning against the castle wall, and started fighting with the bats. Su Ming chose to rush out, not without reason. If the opponent was an ordinary animal, even the vampire bats with normal brains in the zoo, he would choose to hide in the tower and wait for these bats to find that they could not catch food and leave on their own. But these bats can't even control their mental power, their thinking is chaotic and violent, they are completely a group of lunatics, and they can't be judged by normal thinking. To put it bluntly, this is a group of zombies in the animal world. Except that they seem to have no infectious ability, they are not much different from the dead. They have no thinking, are fearless, and want to tear up all the food they see. It is impossible to expect them to retreat when they see difficulties. Only kill them all. As soon as the two appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of the bats hovering in the air. The bats shrouded in the sky above the castle rushed towards the two from all directions. These bats were really huge. Originally, hundreds of them were hovering above the castle. From a distance, the castle looked like it was covered by a layer of black fog. Now they all gathered in one direction, and the sky above the castle suddenly became clear, but the area around the tower where Su Ming was immediately turned into a large black ball. From the outside, it is impossible to see what is happening inside this huge black ball. The black ball made of bats seems to have its own life. From a distance, it keeps squirming, as if it is a stomach, trying to crush and digest the two foods inside. Inside the black ball, Su Ming and Su Meng are not at ease either. After the two rushed out, Su Ming's rhino energy storage ball was still working, and he opened the other two energy storage balls without hesitation. One is the alligator turtle energy storage ball. Compared with the previous rhino skin energy storage ball, the alligator turtle energy storage ball has stronger defense. The biggest difference between the two is that the rhino skin is more convenient to move, sacrificing a certain amount of defense in exchange for mobility, which is suitable for use in the mountains with many mosquitoes. Obviously, what is needed now is defense. The role of the buffalo energy storage ball is not strength, but toughness, that is, endurance. With Su Ming's own physical strength, it is not difficult to kill a bat with 3 punches and 2 kicks. The difficulty lies in how to keep fighting. Fighting is very physically demanding. Even for professional boxers, a round is only 2 minutes, and they must rest. With these 3 energy storage balls, Su Ming immediately transformed into a powerful humanoid monster. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 795. Several bats suddenly pounced on Su Ming, and their huge wings even enveloped Su Ming's entire body, wriggling like a big silkworm cocoon. With a click, a bat bit hard on Su Ming's neck. Its sharp teeth, which were comparable to fruit knives, could even bite through the wolf's skull with full force. It's a pity that this time it encountered a hard fork. Even if Su Ming's neck was not a piece of iron, it was no different. When he took a bite, the bat's teeth actually made a squeaking sound, and his diaphragm ached, and there was not even a trace. It didn't stay on Su Ming's neck. The bat opened its mouth to bite again without fear of death, but suddenly the top of its head tightened. Su Ming grabbed the little head of this guy, and twisted its head 180 degrees with a mistake of his hands. Several other bats bit Su Ming's body desperately. Su Ming laughed evilly, covered the key parts of his crotch with his hands, and suddenly jumped up on the spot. This time, instead of jumping upward, I jumped backward. With several bats lying on his body, he hit the castle wall behind him. With a bang, the weight of more than 100 kilograms, coupled with the effect of inertia, hit the granite wall hard. Blood splattered everywhere, and the bats lying on the body were immediately bruised and bloody. Su Ming rubbed his dizzy head, grinned, casually pulled off the bat corpse hanging on his body like a rag and threw it aside. He opened his arms to the large group of bats in front of him and said with a ferocious smile, "Come and report, continue to surround me." The mutated bats were so smart that they obviously didn't know that the guy in front of them was beyond their ability to deal with. In the blink of an eye, they were all over Su Ming's body again. And so on. Su Ming's method of fighting bats was relatively flexible. He relied on bats to be unable to break through defenses and used the environment to fight. In contrast, Su Meng's fighting method was relatively simple. When they first met Su Meng, the group of poachers fired several shots at Su Meng. Su Meng relied on his agility that was inconsistent with his size to dodge the first 2 bullets but was still hit by one. However, the pistol bullets did not pose much of a threat to him. The guy's muscles were incredibly dense, and the bullets got stuck in the muscles, causing only some flesh injuries. Compared to pistol bullets, vampire bat teeth are obviously less attractive. The muscles all over Su Meng's body were tense. After the bat bit down hard and bloody, it was like biting into a piece of wood. As soon as it penetrated a little bit, his teeth were stuck by the muscles, and he couldn't continue to bite down. It's difficult to even open your mouth and let go. He raised his hand and pulled out the bat that bit him like a carrot. Then he raised his hand and threw it to the ground, and stepped on it with his big feet. With a pop, the bat's head was stepped on until it was bloody and bloody. One after another, the bats bit him, and their huge bodies were covered with bats. Then they were pulled off one by him and crushed under his feet. The 2 people coincidentally used their bodies as bait. The bloodthirsty and brainless mutated bats thought they were in front of a gluttonous meal. Only when they actually bit into it did they realize that it was a deadly trap. Time passed little by little, and the big black ball composed of hundreds of bats still seemed to be crawling crazily on the outside, but the number of bats inside was constantly decreasing. Su Ming really has a way. There was a low cheer in the basement. Although it looked like the bats were besieging them and not even Su Meng and Su Ming could be seen, the fact that these bats were still gathering together after several minutes had passed meant that the 2 people who were surrounded were still there. Stay alive. But, there is no way to go on like this. Nangong Yan was secretly worried. There were too many bats. No matter what Su Ming and Su Meng did among the bats, they would always run out of energy. At that time. No, something must be done. Nangong Yan turned around and looked around the basement, trying to find something that could help. At the same time, Su Ming, who was surrounded by bats, shouted at Su Meng, "Can you withstand it?" Su Ming shook his hands and smashed the 2 bats to the ground, then turned around and grinned, indicating that it was okay. A bat was about to crash into his big mouth, but Su Meng was not polite. He opened his mouth and bit off the bat's head with a click, leaving a mouthful of blood with a crunch. When everyone's attention was focused outside the tower, no one seemed to notice that in the forest outside the castle, there was a large bat nearly 2 meters long that did not participate in the battle. Instead, it had its wings wrapped together and hung upside down. On the branch, 2 small blood-red eyes were coldly paying attention to the battle situation in the distance. What a group of powerful guys. It's getting more and more interesting. In the underground research room of another castle, Nicole vaguely saw the scene on the tower of Abic Castle through the big screen. The large group of bats were still besieging her, which made her even more convinced that the other party must have very special means, otherwise, not to mention a few people, even dozens of them, would have turned into bones by now. What's so great about this? Rotten Tooth Lock clenched his fists and made a rattling sound as he grunted, "If it were me, as long as I have enough time, I can kill all these stinky bats by myself." Nicole turned around and smiled at Locke. She seemed to be in a good mood. This means that there are powerful guys similar to you in this group of people. Locke grinned. It's far worse than me. I can kill these bats alone. Because you are the brainchild of the organization, cute little Locke, your value is no different from a moving diamond mountain. Nicole smiled, whispered to herself, then pressed a few buttons on the console and said, "Okay, the test ends here. Don't let the bats really kill those people. Locke, tell the security guards in the castle to get ready. You will lead the team to quietly raid Abic Castle tonight and capture all these guys. Maybe you will need to do it yourself at that time. What if they run away? It's still a long way from Abic Castle," Locke asked. "It doesn't matter. I will let the bats stay in the forest around the castle. They can't run away. What's going on?" At this moment, on the big screen, the black ball of bats suddenly became very thin, revealing the figures of two people. Due to the immaturity of technology and distance, Nicole couldn't see it very clearly, so she didn't find the abnormality until now, but if she was at the scene, she could have seen that the group of bats surrounding Su Ming and Su Meng was actually very small in number. The bat corpses on the ground piled up like a mountain, and the few dozen bats left were not enough to block the view. A few minutes later, all the bats in the field were completely wiped out. Because they used themselves as bait, the mutant bats had no chance to escape. Su Ming and Su Meng were exhausted and panted, sitting on the mountain of bat corpses at their feet. Damn it! How can it be so powerful? After seeing the scene clearly on the screen, Nicole was shocked. The last bat in the forest quietly flapped its wings, left Abic Castle, and flew in a certain direction in the distance. A crested ibis quietly hid in the tree canopy dozens of meters behind it, staring at it silently. Seeing the bat leave, the crested ibis also followed silently. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 796. The whole castle seemed to be quiet all of a sudden, with only the whistling wind passing through their ears. Su Ming and Su Meng were exhausted and panting, sitting back to back on the pile of bat corpses, gasping for breath. This was not just killing a dozen bats that day, but hundreds and thousands of bats. Even with the amazing savage physique and Su Ming's energy storage ball, they relied entirely on their bare hands to fight, one hand pinched to death and one foot stepped to death, and more than 1,000 bats made the two exhausted. Even if 1,000 pigs were tied up and placed there waiting for people to kill, it would take half a day to kill them, and the blade of the knife would be bent, let alone a battle. At this moment, the door of the basement suddenly opened. Zhao Yun took the lead, and Avitu, Xiaohu, a nurse, and others rushed out from behind, holding all kinds of strange weapons, wearing very ancient leather armor, wearing ridiculous armor that did not match their body size at all, and even wearing a big horn helmet on the orange little head, blocking the eyes. Big brother, run. We are here to save you. Kill. Su Ming, hold on. Oh God bless you, damn bats, old Avitu will fight you. Stand behind me. After several people rushed out, they started to yell. Before they took a few steps, the yelling stopped. Looking at the bat corpses all over the ground not far away, and Su Ming, who was sitting on the corpses and waving at them with a smile, these people were stunned for a moment. You are so fierce, director. Kill them all. With a clang, the mace in the hand of Nurse Xiaohu fell on the bluestone ground. Su Ming, you are not injured. Nangongyan looked at Su Ming's bloodstains and asked anxiously. Avitu's mouth was wide open, enough to fit a salted duck egg. God, are these two people the scorching angels sent by God? They actually killed all the vampires. Avitu's brain was completely short-circuited. If he was surprised when he first saw Su Ming and Su Meng kill more than a dozen bats so neatly, now it was completely beyond his understanding. Zhao Yun held a shield in one hand and a chain ball in the other, like a werewolf warrior in the game, looking at the mountain of bat corpses and blinking wildly. Big brother, where are you? Cheng Cheng is here to save you. Among all the people, only Cheng Cheng was still running around like there were no flies. The little guy was wearing a large horn helmet that covered his eyes and didn't see what happened at all. Be careful, don't fall. Su Ming grabbed Cheng Cheng, who was running around, and almost hit the wall. Huh? Big brother, you are injured. Cheng Cheng looked at Su Ming with blood all over his face. Oh, that's all the enemy's blood. Your elder brother, have been through hundreds of battles, but I don't have a single wound on my body. Su Ming looked pretentious. After the bat incident, Su Ming and Su Meng took a bath and washed off the blood on their bodies. They didn't bother to clean up the bat corpses that were still accumulated in the castle, so they gathered everyone together. Uncle Zhao, please lead the team and escort Nangong and the others away. Su Meng and I have something to do, Su Ming said. Let's go together. What are you two going to do here? Zhao Yun frowned. Yes, let's go together. The mountains are too dangerous. Nangong Yan was scared, especially when Su Ming walked out of the pile of bat corpses covered in blood. She almost collapsed at that moment. Fortunately, as Su Ming said, all the blood was from the enemy. Su Ming didn't bleed at all, but there were a few big bumps on his forehead, which looked like he was going to grow a few horns on his head. Su Meng, on the other hand, had suffered many minor injuries all over his body. Although the bat's teeth could not really pose a threat, they still bit out a lot of large and small tooth holes, making his skin bumpy and uneven, which affected the touch. Don't worry, I'm an animal expert and I know the habits of bats. A few hundred bats of this size are already the limit of the population. If there are more, there will not be enough food, so there will be no danger later. Su Ming started talking nonsense. After all, among the people present, he was the real authority when it came to animals. Su Meng and I will stay and collect some useful organs from the bat corpses for research. The scene is too bloody and not suitable for women and children. At this point, he glanced at Avaitu. Oh, there are also old people watching. Avaitu, you go back with them, I'll let the big bad wolf pull the cart. Avaitu was eager to leave this horrible place, nodded vigorously. After we go back, should we call the police? No, Su Ming waved his hands repeatedly. Avaitu, if you call the police, I really can't explain it. Killing hundreds of bats, the police and the forestry department will be annoyed to death. Even if the truth is finally investigated, it will probably take a long time. You also know that I have a company in China and I can't stay in Romania for too long. But for Avaitu, who is used to abiding by the law and following the rules and regulations, it is obviously a bit difficult to accept that such a big thing did not call the police. Okay, Avaitu, after all, none of us broke the law, right? We killed the bats to protect ourselves. Think about it, if these thousands of vampire bats target not the Epic Castle, but the Ferrero village at the foot of the mountain, what consequences will it cause? Su Ming said. Avaitu shuddered at the thought of thousands of ferocious bats wreaking havoc in a small village with dozens of households. Besides, once the police and forestry departments intervene on a large scale, it will definitely have a serious impact on the tourism industry here. Old Avaitu, the people nearby all rely on the tourism industry for their livelihood. You don't want to do bad things with good intentions, Su Ming said lightly. Sometimes, we should also learn to be flexible when it is reasonable and legal. Avaitu was a little confused. How could it be reasonable and legal not to call the police when a large-scale animal attack occurred? But what the other party said seemed to make sense. Okay, we'll wait for you two to come back in the village, Avaitu said. After dealing with Avaitu, Su Ming gave Nangong Yan a few more words to reassure her. He specially talked to Zhao Yun alone for a few minutes. After arranging everything, he finally infused the 8 big grey wolves with mental power, or directly suppress them with mental power to ensure that they would protect the carriage even if they died. Only then did he feel at ease to let Nangongyan and the others return the same way. Su Ming was unwilling to call the police, not for what he said, but because he didn't want the police to intervene in his next actions. The large-scale attack of bats really pissed him off. This was definitely not an accident, nor was it a spontaneous behavior of animals. The crested ibis, who had not participated in the battle and was patrolling around the castle, proved this point even more. A big bat flew away quietly. "I came here to propose marriage and take a vacation, to handle the most important marriage event in my life. Whose pants were not tight and released these bastard bats to deal with me. If it weren't for the ability of animal friends and Su Mang, now these people, including Nangongyan, have become dead. If you dare to cause trouble to the owner of animal friends in the mountains, you must be prepared to pay 10 times the price. Even in this mountain, the ability of animal friends is suppressed." At the same time, a huge bat staggered through the forest. The forest is not a safe place, especially for animals. The forest is a paradise of freedom, but also a hell full of dangers, and you may die at any time. Along the way, the big bat encountered natural enemies such as hawks and pythons several times, but this guy's fighting power was obviously much higher than that of ordinary vampire bats, and he could escape safely every time. In the evening, the big bat finally returned to the starting point, outside the cliff of the laboratory castle, flapping its big wings and drilling into the sewer exit of the cliff. What it didn't notice was that a crested ibis with fiery red feathers followed it slowly all the way, and was now half a kilometer away in the sky, with a panoramic view of the castle environment. The mental power in the forest was severely suppressed, and it was too far away from the Abic castle. The crested ibis had no way to use the ability of soul attachment to pass everything it saw to Su Ming, so it cried in the air and flapped its wings like a sharp arrow to fly back in the direction it came from. Not long after, a helicopter took off from the top platform of the castle. This big guy, which was modified from a military helicopter, was unarmed due to legal reasons, but its speed and stability were far superior to ordinary civilian helicopters, especially the huge internal space. 8 fully armed warriors, led by Rotten Tooth Lock, were sitting in a helicopter. The helicopter circled in the air for a while and then flew towards the direction of Abic Castle. Sure enough, there is a problem. In Abic Castle, Su Ming finally waited for the little crested ibis to return. From the information it provided, it can be easily judged that this group of bats are not wild animals, but live in a modern castle with complete facilities. If it is a dilapidated castle, it may be that the cuckoo has occupied the magpie's nest, or if you think more mysteriously, it may really be that the bats have become spirits, but a castle with modern facilities and even a helipad is completely different. The owner of the castle with modern facilities is simply not unaware of the thousands of super vampire bats living in the castle. By the same token, the violent and brainless big bats who only know how to hunt will not be indifferent to the humans in the castle. The only possibility for the two to coexist peacefully is that these bats are raised by the owner of the castle. Of course, the reverse is not impossible, the owner of the castle is raised by bats. However, the possibility of the latter is almost negligible. If the small group of bats encountered on the way here was just an accident, then the sudden appearance of a large group of bats in the Abic castle dozens of kilometers away and the siege of his group of people was very suspicious. What hatred, has it brought to my head? Su Ming gritted his teeth. Since his debut, he has been the only one who has calculated others, and has never been calculated by others. This time, he didn't even know who the other party was, but he was tricked. If he didn't have superpowers, he would have met God now. Oh no, with his identity, he would probably have met the old man Mazda, the god of fire. At that time, Mr. Mazda asked, "Xiao Su, have you completed the task I gave you and led the people of the world to live a happy life?" How to answer? How to say? "Boss, I haven't lived a happy life myself, and I was killed by a group of bats just after proposing. Where can I, the messenger of God, put my face? Where can I put the face of the god of fire, Boss Ma? My brother can tolerate it, but my sister-in-law can't. This is a joke, but it's even more terrifying when you calm down and think about it. The environment in the mountains suppressed the mental power, and at this time, a large group of mutant bats that can't be controlled by mental power came to attack. Could it be that the other party came here for his own spiritual power? Compared to Boss Mazda, mental power is his greatest magic weapon and support, and it is also his biggest secret. Su Ming was furious. The crested ibis seemed to be able to feel Su Ming's anger. It flapped its wings in the air and made a strange cry. This guy's cry was clear and elegant when he was a child, but for some reason, as he grew older, his cry became more and more unrestrained. I can't spare these bastards this time, huh? What's going on? The faint sound of a helicopter's motor was heard not far away, and Su Ming realized that the crested ibis had just discovered the enemy situation and issued an early warning. Su Meng, hide yourself and act as the opportunity arises. Su Meng responded with a naive voice and left the terrace. Su Ming stood alone on the terrace, holding a pergola with his hands and looking around. A helicopter often seen in war movies appeared from above the forest and quickly approached the castle. Soon they were within a distance where both sides could see each other. Su Ming stood on the terrace and waved to the other party. Damn it, Locke, have you forgotten Miss Nicole's instructions to sneak into the castle quietly without making too much noise? You let the plane fly so close, and now the other party has discovered us, in the helicopter, the security captain leading the team said angrily. Don't forget, I am the on-site commander now. You weakling, if you say another word, I will twist your head off. Locke was very excited, grinning and showing his rotten teeth. Nicole is good at everything, but she is too cautious. A sneak attack is not my style. Anyway, they will become experimental subjects soon. What will happen if they are discovered? Okay, the security captain absolutely believed Locke's words. This guy has a very bad reputation within the entire organization. He is not afraid of anyone except Nicole. If he is angered, Dr. Yuri will be a lesson to him. The other party is waving to us and seems to be shouting. Do you want to answer? Asked the pilot flying the plane. If you want to eat a chicken, do you need to tell it that you want to eat it? Locke became a little wiser at this time, tied a rope around his waist, and said, drive to the terrace, all team members come down with me and arrest everyone in the castle. Su Ming waved to the helicopter, but the helicopter was indifferent and flew overhead instead. The doors on both sides were opened, and 4 heavily armed guys were tied with ropes and slid down from the cabin. They all looked like professionals. The guns in their hands were pointed at Su Ming below. People below, please pay attention and give up resistance, otherwise we will shoot. The reply finally came from the helicopter, although it was in English. Fortunately it was relatively simple, and Su Ming finally understood it. Could it be someone from the local government army? This was Su Ming's first thought. But immediately afterwards, he stopped thinking about this issue. Su Ming was probably very irritable today because he was stimulated one after another and almost lost Nangong's life. No matter who you are. With one hand behind his back, he made a fierce gesture of beheading towards Su Ming's hiding place. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 797. According to Su Ming's experience, there is a very simple way to distinguish the identity of a group of armed elements, whether they are from the government or private armed forces. If they are legal armed forces from the government, they will generally announce their identities and make announcements, even if they are arresting criminals, when they have already gained an absolute upper hand and are encircling them. Because any government armed force is on the right path and backed by the law, at least on the surface. Unless the other party has hostages, or is a vicious terrorist who can be killed on the spot. The illegal private armed forces are just the opposite, because they generally dare not reveal their identities. To put it simply, they dare not make a big deal. The group of people climbing down the rope from the helicopter in front of them, except for shouting to put down their weapons at the beginning, there was no other words. They fell silently and soon approached the stone bridge below. If the other party is a legitimate government army, even if it is the Romanian government army, Su Ming can completely surrender. After all, the governments of various places still follow the rules. Moreover, Su Ming is no longer an unknown person in the world. He has a strong motherland as a backing. As long as he is willing to cooperate with the investigation, there will be no big problems. But now the scene is obviously wrong. Once surrounded and detained by a group of armed militants, he will be completely passive, and his life will be completely in the hands of the other party. He was sharp-eyed and saw a very familiar sign on the bulletproof vests of several militants. It is similar to the mark of the God's Garden at the beginning, but it is simplified. It was said that Su Ming had no time to think about anything. With an animal instinct for danger, he made a beheading gesture to Su Ming behind him without hesitation. No matter what your background is, it is better to take the initiative than to put yourself in danger. If you wait until this group of people lands smoothly, it is impossible for him and Su Ming to fight this group of militants head-on. Buzz. There was a sound of breaking through the air, as if it was about to tear the air apart. The heart-pounding vibration could be heard from a long distance away, and even the sound of the helicopter's propeller circling could not cover it. A long arrow suddenly flew out from a tower not far away and accurately hit the cockpit of the helicopter. There was a shudder, but there was no explosive scene of the aircraft being destroyed and people being killed. The glass of the helicopter is a special glass, which can withstand even close-range shooting by pistol bullets. At most, it will crack but will not be penetrated. If you want to penetrate the glass of an armed helicopter, only rifles such as AK can do it. Although the arrow shot by Su Ming was powerful and heavy, it was still far from the attack intensity of a rifle bullet. It must be said that the hardness of bullets and arrows is completely different. Bullets are made of metal, while arrows only have an iron head and the body of the arrow is made of wood. If there is a camera that can slow down the speed here, you can clearly see that after the arrow hits the helicopter glass, the triangular iron arrowhead is directly flattened, and due to the huge kinetic energy, the entire body of the arrow is cracked. The whole arrow was completely exploded, but the helicopter was safe and sound. However, this time, the helicopter pilot was shocked. Suddenly, a small black dot flew towards him and exploded on the glass in front of him. Even those sitting in the cabin could hear it clearly. There was even a small white dot on the glass in front, and it was about to crack. The pilot subconsciously pulled the joystick, and the helicopter turned sideways in mid-air and circled away from the tower. A group of militants hanging on the rope saw that they were only a few meters away from the ground. The helicopter moved from the terrace to the canyon. The ground under their feet suddenly became a cliff and they could not land at all. Ah! A shrill scream echoed in the valley. The guy who landed the fastest was less than 2 meters away from the terrace. He loosened the rope and jumped down. Who knew that the helicopter would suddenly change direction, and he fell into the canyon outside the castle like a bungee jumper without a safety rope. It was obvious that he was dead. This guy was eager to make a contribution, but he lost his life instead. This arrow scared both sides. Su Ming realized that this helicopter was completely different from his hummingbird. If it was a hummingbird, Su Ming's arrow would have shot through the glass and killed the pilot. It seemed that cold weapons were meaningless at this time. The helicopter pilot and a group of armed men on it also broke out in cold sweats. Although the opponent did not have hot weapons, they obviously had a super archer. Although they could not cause damage to the helicopter for the time being, the people hanging outside the helicopter were simply live targets. Immediately afterwards, an even more shocking scene appeared. In the final analysis, Abic Castle was a military stronghold in the Cold Weapon era. Its biggest function was to defend against the enemy's attack. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. In the Cold Weapon era, as long as the stone bridge was defended and it was high above, no matter how many people came, they would die. In the battle to defend the city, long-range weapons were the most important. In addition to bows and arrows, there were 2 crossbow carts with hundreds of years of history on the 2 towers of Abic Castle. This thing is specially used to deal with siege weapons. It is 1.5 meters long and made entirely of oak and metal. The crossbow arrow is thicker than an adult's arm. It requires 2 people to lift it onto the crossbow cart, and then several strong men work together to pull the crossbow cart's spring. It has a range of up to 600 or 700 meters at a high altitude. It is simply an unexplosive cannonball, enough to destroy large siege weapons such as siege vehicles and catapults. Su Meng smiled ferociously, holding a crossbow arrow and placing it on the crossbow. Amidst the harsh sound of the noose turning, the crossbow on the right slowly turned and aimed at the helicopter in the sky. F.K. The helicopter pilot cursed loudly and broke out in cold sweat. If he was really hit by this thing, not to mention the glass, no part of the helicopter would be able to block it. So what if it's blocked? The huge impact force will directly knock the helicopter out of control. If the fatal bullet hits the propeller, the helicopter will crash on the spot. Soon enough, a huge crossbow arrow had been shot out. The well-maintained arrow glowed dazzlingly in the sunset, like thunder striking at the helicopter. The hairs all over the pilot's body stood on end. He almost didn't need to think as he raised the helicopter again. Unfortunately, the crossbow arrows were not very accurate, and Su Meng was not a professional. Even if the helicopter did not hide, there would be no danger. The crossbow arrows flew diagonally into the forest 20 or 30 meters away from the helicopter. Despite this, everyone on the helicopter was still covered in white hair and sweat. A very absurd feeling appeared in my mind. Now in the 21st century, a retired military helicopter gunship and a group of modern warriors armed to the teeth would be chased to death by cold weapons from the Middle Ages. Whoosh! Whizzing! Several more crossbow arrows were fired out. Su Meng's skills were getting better and better, and the flight path of the crossbow arrows was getting closer and closer to the helicopter. The most recent one was almost less than 5 meters away from the helicopter. In mid-air, the distance of 5 meters can be regarded as almost shoulder-to-shoulder passing and can be ignored. However, the helicopter was not hit after all. The helicopter was about 100 or 200 meters away from Su Meng's crossbow. At this distance, the helicopter was no bigger than a small black dot. It was too difficult to hit the helicopter. And after all, this is a moving target, an intelligent moving target controlled by humans. Fortunately, there are no long-range weapons on the helicopter, so they cannot effectively endanger the safety of the crossbow and Su Meng. They are hanging around in the air more than 100 meters away. A group of security guards, including Locke, want to hit and hide behind the crossbow. It was almost impossible for Su Meng to even hit the crossbow. The probability was not much greater than that of a crossbow hitting a helicopter. The two sides were in a stalemate for a while. Of course, Su Meng and Su Meng obviously held on longer. One of them was hiding in the tower, and the other was hiding behind the ballista. It would be fine if they stayed there all day. However, the helicopter on the opposite side was not so relaxed. Let's not forget about it. Speaking of oil issues, the group of soldiers hanging in the air below couldn't stand it at first. Carlos, you stupid pig. Unexpectedly, Rotten Tooth Locke, who seemed to be the most brainless, reacted the fastest at this time. Through the intercom hanging on his lips, he yelled at the helicopter pilot Carlos, "You pig, won't you get around the ballista, behind? Let's kill the archers and at least destroy the crossbow." Before Carlos could react, he walked around behind the ballista. Wouldn't the ballista also turn around and shoot? The reason why it is still safe at the moment is because it maintains a safe distance from the ballista. Once it gets close enough to destroy the ballista may also hit the helicopter. Then a whole plane of people will die. Damn it, I should have asked Nicole to twist your head off and see if it's filled with poop. Locke was so angry with this guy. Will the ballista turn around? Totally impossible. The biggest disadvantage of this large defensive weapon fixed on the city wall is that it is not flexible enough. The firepower can only cover a cone-shaped range directly in front. It can turn left and right at most, and it is absolutely impossible to make a 180-degree turn. Why? Because behind the ballista is the interior of a big castle, which is open to the outside world. The builders of the castle and everyone else are so confused. Could it be possible for such a big killer to turn around and fire inside? What an idiot, what kind of bullshit mechanical engineering college student, Locke rolled his eyes and said. After being scolded by Locke, Carlos finally understood this truth. It was not that he was uneducated. As a helicopter pilot, how could he understand the functions of the castle's ballista? What's more, most people who are accustomed to using modern technology have a disdainful attitude towards cold weapons. The helicopter turned around, made a large circle in the air, and approached the ballista from the back of Abic Castle. As expected by Locke, the ballista below followed the direction of the helicopter, but stopped when it turned about 40 or 50 degrees. According to this rotation range, the fire coverage area of the ballista was approximately the area directly in front of the castle. The area of a 90-degree sector. In medieval warfare, two ballistas on two towers, one on the left and one on the right, were completely enough to cover all incoming enemies on the front of the castle. Hundreds of years ago, there were no troops that could fly and could go around the back of the castle in the air. Damn, I'm such an idiot. One method can solve all problems. The driver Carlos was deeply inspired and slapped himself hard on the forehead. In fact, there are many ways to deal with the ballista, such as flying directly above it vertically and throwing grenades downward to explode it. Drop this thing. Su-meng, run. Su-ming had already guessed that something would happen in the tower. The ballista could frighten the opponent at first, but it was obviously unrealistic to really expect the medieval ballista to drive back a group of modern warriors. When he saw the helicopter start to turn around and increase the altitude, Su-ming yelled at Su-meng without hesitation. Su-meng was not stupid. Seeing the other party escape from the range of the crossbow cart, he did not want to fight at all. He grabbed a crossbow arrow used on the crossbow cart and threw it at the helicopter like Hercules throwing a javelin. Then, while the helicopter was dodging, he jumped off the tower and hid in a safe place in the castle. Da-da-da. The militants on the helicopter were depressed for a long time and finally found a chance to retaliate. Before they landed completely, they launched a fierce fire attack on the crossbow cart below in mid-air. The crossbow cart was hit and wood chips flew everywhere and fell apart. Ha ha ha, very good, Carlos is ready to descend, and the rest of you follow me to catch those two annoying bugs, Locke grinned and shouted. The helicopter slowly lowered its altitude and was about to put a group of team members climbing on the rope on the ground of the castle. Except for the unlucky guy who was too active the first time and jumped off the plane and fell into the canyon, the other 7 people looked down with guns. Now. Su-ming waited for a long time and finally got this opportunity. The people on the plane focused all their attention on the ground, especially the guys with guns. Under the setting sun, a dazzling red suddenly emerged from the fiery clouds. As soon as this red appeared, it rushed towards the cockpit of the helicopter with a red tail flame like a falling tide. Oh! Damn, what is this? Shoot, shoot quickly. Carlos, the helicopter pilot, was the first to discover the abnormality. He yelled and wanted to notify the team members below to raise their guns and shoot, but it was too late. The people below just heard the sound and looked up, and the helicopter was pierced by this red light. It was just like a laser. This red light broke through the glass from one side of the helicopter and flew in, and broke through the cabin from the other side. A bird. The people hanging under the helicopter only then saw what this red light was. Just as he was about to raise his gun to shoot, it was too late. It was unknown whether the helicopter equipment was severely damaged or the pilot Carlos was killed. The helicopter, which was originally descending steadily, suddenly lost control and fell to the side like a drunkard. Oh! No! God, save me! It's time to die! The group of militants hanging on the rope screamed in fear like a string of grasshoppers. A thick smoke rose from the cockpit of the helicopter, carrying the group of people down into the canyon, hitting the cliff several times in mid-air, and finally falling into the rapids below. Boom! The huge explosion seemed to shake the ground. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 798. Su Ming stood on the castle terrace and looked down. There was an explosion, and the fire took off. It was like a big mine exploded in the mountain stream, but it was immediately extinguished by the rolling water, and the wreckage of the helicopter followed. Float downstream with the current. As for the group of militants on the plane, if they could still survive in this situation, it would be unless the gods came down to earth. The crested ibis stood by the terrace with its head held high, arrogantly combing its feathers without even looking at its results. After eating a lot of tai sui meat, this guy finally had the appearance of the divine bird in the Park Genji family legend. His feathers were like fine iron, especially the long beak, which was extremely sharp. At first, Hai Dongqing was eating suffered this big loss. Crested ibis is now simply a terrorist with a bomb strapped to his body. Anyone who dares to mess with me will be killed by me. The only thing that makes Su Ming feel a little regretful is that some valuable clues may be found on this helicopter. Now it has fallen into the canyon and been washed away by the flood. It is very troublesome to salvage it. At least he and Su Ming cannot. Doing such a big project in a short time. But that's not important. Even though he had won a great victory, Su Ming's nose was almost crooked with anger. What on earth did this mean? First, there were a swarm of vampire bats, and now they simply sent armed helicopters and armed men with live ammunition to deal with me. What hatred, what hatred! The crested ibis swooped down into the mountain stream below, and came back after a while, with two semi-break rifles hanging on its long beak. Lead the way, Su Ming put his gun on his back and said fiercely to the crested ibis. Miss Nicole, we have lost contact with helicopter No. 2. In the underground research room, the deputy security director suddenly raised his head and said to Nicole with a shocked look on his face. Nicole didn't know much about mechanics, but she also knew that losing contact was definitely not a good idea. She frowned and asked, "How is it possible? The communication equipment and positioning equipment on the helicopter are very advanced, how could it lose contact? Moreover, military helicopters are equipped with black boxes. Even if the aircraft explodes, it will be difficult to completely damage it. Ms. Nicole, the helicopter's black box involves the security of the US military. Before we bought it through channels, the black box had been dismantled. At present, the main contact methods are the radio and the positioning system. The radio can no longer contact Carlos, and the positioning system it also failed, the deputy security director said in a serious tone. Based on my experience, there is only one possibility: the plane exploded. What? Nicole finally lost her previous calmness, strode up to the deputy security director, grabbed his collar, and asked sternly, "Where are the people on the plane? Where's Locke?" The deputy director's body, which weighed more than 100 kilograms, was actually lifted up by Nicole with one hand. It seemed that even if Nicole's strength was not as strong as Locke, she was not much weaker. "Nicole, Miss Nicole, please calm down." The deputy director looked pale and stammered, "We don't know yet whether the people on the plane are safe, but..." "Nothing, tell me." The veins on Nicole's forehead burst out, like twisted earthworms, and her slender white neck was actually covered with light blue meridians. She looked very scary and completely unconscious. Like normal humans. Although a person at the level of deputy director can only be regarded as a peripheral figure of the organization, he is, after all, the closest to the core among the periphery. He is often responsible for handling some of the organization's shady affairs and knows some of the organization's secrets. Seeing Nicole's expression at this time, the situation was appalling. How could he dare to hide anything? He quickly said, "Miss Nicole, everyone on the plane has a communicator. I'll contact them." Nicole threw the deputy director aside and said coldly, "Contact Locke first." The deputy director hurriedly operated the computer to get in touch with Locke's communication equipment, but what came from the other end was a heart-stopping beep, 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 accompanied by noise. After half a minute, there was no sound. "Answer." The deputy director looked back at Nicole in fear, and Nicole gritted her teeth and said, "Contact other people." Beep, beep, beep. Doo-doo. Doo-doo, doo-doo. The supervisor contacted the communicators of all the team members on the helicopter, but without exception, there was no response. In other words, everyone on the helicopter has lost contact. The helicopter probably exploded, and everyone on the plane lost contact. No matter how stupid you are, you can probably guess something. A helicopter flying in the sky explodes, and the consequences are self-evident. Nicole's face was gloomy and uncertain, and the veins on her neck were like rapidly growing earthworms, or the roots of a big tree, rapidly spreading towards her face. The deputy security director was thinking more about it at this time. He hesitated and waited for several seconds, and finally said boldly, "Miss Nicole, I think we should face reality. Regardless of the people in the helicopter and Locke, no matter whether we are dead or alive, we can no longer stay in the castle and must move as soon as possible. There are many private helicopters in Europe, and a helicopter flight will not attract much attention. But if a helicopter explodes or crashes, the government will inevitably intervene, and it will soon be possible to trace the clues to the castle. If the original owner of the castle, Dr. Yuri, was still alive, he might still be able to handle it. Dr. Yuri is a famous scientist, archaeologist, and also holds the title of nobility, an out-and-out count. This castle belongs to him. In Romania, Dr. Yuri has a certain energy. But this biggest amulet was killed by Nicole. It would be even more unimaginable if the helicopter crashed in a densely populated area. It is very possible that the government has now found the owner of the helicopter from the wreckage, and maybe he is heading towards the castle. No matter what, as long as the wreckage is found, the castle will be involved, and the disappearance of Dr. Yuri is even more suspicious. So the only thing that can be done now is transfer. Seeing that Nicole was silent, the deputy director became bolder and continued, "In order to prevent the organization from being exposed, each of our strongholds has a self-destruction mechanism. Miss Nicole, money and castles are not important to the organization, talents, especially people like you, valuable talents, are the core of the organization. You must evacuate safely. I will escort you out now." Probably because she was flattered, Nicole's expression softened a lot, and she nodded towards the deputy security director. "Well, that's true, the organization doesn't care about money, but talent is very important. But..." She paused. He gave the deputy director a weird smile. "However, you are not a talent. You perverted bitch, what on earth are you going to do?" In the underground research room, Ludmila, who had already woken up long ago, was behind the cage and yelled at Nicole. Ludmila was going crazy. When she woke up, she found that she and her team members were like a group of wild beasts, imprisoned in this gloomy underground research room. She even witnessed 2 of her team members being injected with unknown substances. The famous potion roared with signs of painful death. This gorgeous-looking Eastern European chick is clearly conducting some kind of dangerous experiment. Although they have not suffered any substantive abuse, except for the lack of freedom, no one usually tortures them. Even their daily diet is much better than when they were in the company. At least the company does not pay attention to any nutritional combinations, and there is usually no any people came to talk to her, violated her, and even had a physical examination. Of course, the physical examination was done through an iron cage. But the more this happened, the more Ludmila felt chilled. It was obvious that in the eyes of those people, he and these team members were not same kind at all, but experimental equipment. Of course, no one will embarrass their own experimental equipment. On the contrary, they must perform very good maintenance so that when these equipments are used, the equipment can function. She witnessed Nicole killing Dr. Yuri. During the period up to now, she also discovered from the conversation with the other party that this is a very large underground organization. There are countless experimental equipments like them. Escape is impossible. After all, Ludmila was a special forces soldier with the title of she-bear. Under great fear, she did not give up the idea of escape or even resisting. She always paid attention to the opponent's every move, hoping to find favorable opportunities. But the prerequisite for everything is to leave the cage in which they are imprisoned. These pure alloy cages are as thick as a wrist and cannot be opened by human power. She even thought about killing the guards, but unfortunately the guards here didn't seem to like this. Listening to their conversation today, it seems that they have been exposed. Ludmila feels that this is the last chance. Maybe the other party will open the cage and take away their experimental equipment. According to her observations during this period, in addition to herself, there should be 2 team members, 3 to 4 unknown living people, and a large number of various animals in the laboratory. Just open the cage and you have a chance. At least you can fight hard. After seeing what happened to her previous teammates, Ludmila would rather be beaten into pieces by bullets than become a test subject and be used for human experiments. However, when the deputy security director suggested leaving, that damn woman actually shot him in the head. At this moment, Ludmila was going completely crazy. The fact that the other party killed the deputy security director means that she is not going to take anyone away, because she alone cannot escort all the experimental subjects. Roar. A low growl sounded from the cage next door. In the dim light, through the gap in the alloy cage, the 3rd team member, the only one who survived after being injected with the medicine, was in the next cage. Separated by a metal cage as thick as an arm, this team member seemed to have lost the light of human wisdom. There was only a cloudy look in his eyes. The originally strong arms had completely withered, hanging from the body like 2 ridiculous fish fins. Both sides. The reason why it was described as fins was that Ludmila heard with her own ears that the medicine injected by this person contained the word shark, which seemed to be some kind of gene extracted from a shark. At this time, the face of this team member no longer looked human. Whether it was due to genetic mutation or ulceration, the upper and lower lips had completely rotted away. There were also huge cracks on the cheeks on both sides. The newly grown teeth are uneven and different in size. The only thing they have in common is that they are extremely sharp. The new teeth grow out of the gums and forcefully knock out all the original teeth. The mouth looks bloody, which is extremely horrifying. Baker, I will avenge you. Ludmila looked at the poor team members, anger igniting in her chest. However, revenge is not as simple as talking about it. Now she cannot protect herself at all, so she can only talk about it. Damn, Ludmila cursed feebly in her heart. It seemed that she was really going to die. She didn't know why. Before she died, Ludmila actually had a strange idea. If she had known that, she would have taken advantage of the overlord when she was at the zoo, or knocked him out directly, or simply given some medicine to get Su Ming to bed. Already, everyone will have various regrets in their life. Ludmila's biggest regret in these years has actually been this incident. Not far away, after killing the deputy security director, Nicole quickly copied several files from the computer into a hard drive, and used her authority to open the deputy security director's email. In the name of the deputy security director, send an email. Dear Ruth, while working under Dr. Yuri, I discovered that the doctor was secretly engaged in cruel research on. After a long struggle, I decided to report Dr. The doctor probably discovered my thoughts. If I can't come back, I will probably be killed by the doctor. But I will resist to the end. As long as anyone traces this email, their first reaction will be to believe that the death of Dr. Yuri and the deputy director of security, as well as everything that will happen after the castle, is due to the conflict within this criminal group. Of course, this email cannot be used as conclusive evidence and has huge loopholes, but within a short period of time, it can interfere with the direction of the local government's investigation. Romania is not a particularly powerful country. As long as it can buy a certain amount of time, the organization will naturally find ways to influence the Romanian government and suppress this matter. Damn it, Locke, I will avenge you. I will not let anyone in Abic Castle go. Nicole recalled the scenes she saw on the monitor in her mind. Her face was gloomy, and the patterns on her neck faintly emerged. After sending the email, Nicole pressed a few buttons on the central control platform, quickly returned to the castle's helipad, boarded the last helicopter, and slowly took off. Not long after the plane took off, heavy gates were suddenly lowered at all entrances and exits of the castle below, completely sealing off the entire castle. All the computers crackled with electricity and were completely destroyed. A large amount of poisonous gas poured out of the ventilation ducts in the castle. It's poison gas. Su Ming and Su Men were ducking into the castle from the entrance of the bat, the drainage channel. Suddenly, it became dark behind them, the entrance was closed, and then a light red smoke filled the pipe. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 799. To be honest, Su Ming was not sure what the large pink gas that suddenly emerged was. It was a simple truth. He was managing a zoo and running a company, not a gas chamber to torture prisoners of war. He had never seen what real poison gas looked like. It was normal for him to not know what he was good at. However, he and Su Meng sneaked in through the drainage pipe on the edge of the cliff. They were already a little guilty. Just now, the pipe mouth behind them was suddenly closed, and a large group of gas emerged again. They instinctively thought that they were discovered by the owner of the castle. And these gases looked very dreamy. The more beautiful things are, the more poisonous they are. This principle applies not only to flowers, trees and beauties, but also to gases. For example, farts are colorless. Although they smell bad, they are definitely not poisonous to people. Haze is gray and seems to smell like nothing, but if you breathe it every day, you will definitely get various diseases. The same is true for factory waste and car exhaust. Colored gas means that it contains chemical elements. So Su Ming is sure that this thing is probably weird. In a flash, the pink mist had filled the entire passage. Su Ming immediately used 2 energy storage balls. The abilities of the 2 water bears were quite exaggerated and could greatly improve people's various survival abilities. Perhaps due to the special nature of the water bears' abilities, many of them are not special features that strengthen themselves, but on the contrary, they reduce the needs of the body, so the effect of the energy storage ball is not affected by time. Su Ming did an experiment. After turning on the water bear energy storage ball, he could lurk in the water for an hour like a turtle and then come out to take a breath, or he would not feel hungry for 3 or 4 days without eating or drinking. Maybe it was more than 3 or 4 days, but he only conducted the experiment for 4 days and then stopped. Although he was not hungry, he would be greedy. Su Ming named this ability Super Life. Just like the name, after turning on this ability, humans have become super life to a certain extent. The various elements needed by the body are reduced to a minimum, and they almost do not need to rely on the natural or artificial environment outside to survive. It is completely a super life form that can hide in a small building and be unified, regardless of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The poison gas can be ignored under the effect of 2 layers of super life energy storage balls. Cough cough cough. Su Meng coughed violently, his huge body almost bent like a shrimp, his face turned red and white, very ugly. Su Ming was shocked. How could he forget this? Su Ming has a super life energy storage ball, but Su Meng can't do anything. This guy is strong, but he is still a human after all. Even if he can run a horse on his arm and stand on his fist, his resistance to poison gas is definitely not much stronger than that of ordinary people. Poison gas directly harms people's internal organs and respiratory tract. No matter how powerful a person is, these parts are no different. How is it? Su Meng answered Su Ming's words with actual actions. With a wow, he coughed up a lot of blood, and his eyes were bloodshot. Su Ming's scalp suddenly exploded. He and Su Meng had always cooperated well. Even if there was a dinosaur or a large group of militants in the castle, Su Ming would not find it difficult. But who could have thought that the owner of this castle was too unreasonable? Without any warning, he actually released poison gas directly. Poison gas, this thing is pure behavior, even is dare not do it. The Nazis during World War II were despised to this day largely because they used poison gas in concentration camps. Moreover, poison gas is a diffuse gas. Isn't the owner of the castle afraid of affecting other lives in the castle? Now there is no time to think about these. Su Meng's cough is getting worse and worse, and large clumps of blood are spitting out. If his body is not strong enough, it is estimated that he has died. Su Ming mustered up his strength to send out his mental power, wanting to notify the crested ibis guarding outside to break the iron door behind the drainage pipe, so that Su Ming can retreat first and breathe. Whoosh! A red shadow fell from the sky and hit the iron door of the castle drain fiercely, but then, a loud doon sound was heard. The alloy iron door of the drain was probably half a foot thick, and it was estimated that even a cannonball might not be able to penetrate it. The little crested ibis hit it hard, and its mouth was knocked crooked, and golden stars appeared in front of its eyes. Su Ming was also in bad luck. The crested ibis was just a few dozen meters away, and there was an iron door between the two sides, so Su Ming subconsciously used the ability to attach souls, and as a result, the crested ibis feelings were completely copied and passed to him, and he immediately sat on the ground with a dizzy head. The little crested ibis was dizzy, shaking its claws in the air, and swayingly crashed, falling down the cliff, hitting several small trees growing horizontally along the way, and finally fell to the bottom of the cliff with a plop, smashing a big hole in the ground. "Boss, I'll be unconscious for a while, you guys take your time," thought the crested ibis, then he fainted with his head tilted. In the drainage ditch, Su Meng had vomited all over the floor, first blood, then food. The scene was bloody and disgusting. "Hold your breath," Su Ming covered Su Meng's mouth. There are 2 ways for poisonous gas to invade, one is through breathing, and the other is more corrosive and can directly corrode the skin. At present, it seems that the poisonous gas in the pipeline is mostly the former, which is not very corrosive to the skin. Su Meng immediately held his breath, opened his eyes, and tried hard to hold his breath. But this is not a long-term solution. Su Ming suddenly thought of the scene where he covered his mouth with urine and wet cloth to escape when there was a fire on TV. Su Meng, urine is actually not dirty. Many people even buy children's urine for health care. Although I am not a child, my urine is definitely much better than poisonous gas. Just bear with it. Su Ming said, while take off your pants and take out the waterproof bag. Su Meng looked at Su Ming innocently. Not long after, Su Ming's shirt was soaked with urine, and he couldn't help but cover Su Meng's mouth. Cough cough cough. Su Meng coughed violently. How do you feel this time? Su Ming sighed. Fortunately, I had to hold back a lot of urine on the way. Unexpectedly, Su Meng shook his head vigorously, then said wow and spit out a large mouthful of blood, dyeing the diaper red. Me, everything on TV is a lie. Su Ming was extremely depressed. Unexpectedly, Su Meng vomited a few mouthfuls of blood, but his brain suddenly became better. Holding his breath, he pointed at the diaper, then at Su Ming and his own mouth, and made several gestures. Su Ming understood what he meant, and his heart suddenly sank to his butt. What a sin! Everything has a cause and effect, and no one can escape it. Having worked with Su Meng for so long, Su Ming understood what he meant instantly. How can we avoid poisonous gas damage? Not breathing. But can a person not breathe? Obviously not. So what should Su Meng do if he needs to breathe and avoid being harmed by poisonous gas? Obviously someone or equipment is needed to provide him with oxygen. The most common method is artificial respiration, but there is a guy named Su Ming here who is not afraid of poisonous gas and can breathe normally. So, the answer is ready to come out. Looking at Su Meng's bloody mouth, Su Ming almost wanted to cry. He vomited things, blood, and the urine on the diaper just now. Su Meng stared at Su Ming with a come-on attitude. Day. How did the two people get to the inside of the castle through the underground pipe? Su Ming really didn't want to recall it anymore. This was definitely not a pleasant experience. Fortunately, he and Su Meng were the only two people who knew that if there was one more person on the spot, Su Ming suspected that he would consider killing someone to silence him. Don't think about it, it's a must. The entrance to the sewer actually happens to be the underground laboratory inside the castle. All power was cut off in the laboratory, and it was pitch dark, making it impossible to see anything clearly. No, there is movement. By the light of the flashlight on the rifle, a black shadow flashed past, and there were rustling sounds all around. It was obvious that something was moving, and there were also some strange sounds that came near and far. When he expanded his mental power, he discovered that there were many animals in the basement, entrenched in the darkness. There were probably dozens of them, including crocodiles and leopards. In the dark, these animals were wary of each other and were ready to attack each other at any time. The animal instincts came into play at this moment, and they were completely unaware that poisonous gas would soon pour in. Who? Just as Su Ming used his mental power to find out some clues, suddenly there was a strong force on his shoulders and he flew into the air. While the person was in mid-air, he was hit hard on his lower abdomen, and then suffered a heavy blow on his waist. If the super beings hadn't played a role, he would have been dead or disabled. But immediately after, the guy who attacked Su Ming was also knocked away. Su Ming hit him hard like a barbarian warrior. The guy flew several meters away like a kite with its string broken, and fell heavily to the ground. You bunch of beasts. Ludmila was completely desperate. When Nicole left the castle, the doors of all the cages opened at the same time. The animals and humans trapped inside were stunned and immediately escaped from the cages. She took a few survivors and looked for a way out, but soon discovered all the exits were closed and there was no way to escape. There were also poison gas spraying out from several pipes. If the basement and the castle were not so large, they would have been poisoned to death. However, animals did not have this consciousness. After these beasts escaped from the trap, they not only fought with each other, but also launched attacks on humans. It is impossible for ordinary people to be opponents of ferocious beasts, especially when the light sources in the castle have been cut off. Even special forces like Ludmila are powerless. On the contrary, the animal's night eyes come into play at this time. Not long after, the remaining humans were killed by animals again. Ludmila and the last few people had no choice but to return to the cage and close the cage. They desperately discovered that the temporarily safe place in the castle was these iron cages. And as the poisonous gas continues to invade, it won't be long before they are poisoned to death in these cages. The perverted woman opened all the cages before leaving. From the perspective of killing, it was unnecessary. It seemed that she wanted these prisoners to die in despair and pain. When she heard the footsteps and lights, Ludmila's first reaction was that the people in the castle were back. This really can't be blamed on her, because the rifle used by Su Ming was seized from the castle security guard, and the model of the tactical flashlight on it was the same. As a mercenary, Ludmila was very familiar with these weapons, and she could recognize them just by looking at them. Come out. With the idea of fighting a bloody path, even if we die together, Ludmila quietly launched the attack, and the result was the scene just now, when she was knocked away. The noise of the fight immediately attracted nearby beasts. As soon as Ludmila landed, a brown bear staggered to her side and lowered its head to sniff. I didn't expect to be killed by a beast in the end. Ludmila finally gave up resistance and completely accepted her fate. Unexpectedly, the brown bear sniffed her hair, but did not bite her. Instead, it slapped a hyena that wanted to take advantage of it. The light flickered, and a beam of light fell on Ludmila's face, stinging Ludmila's eyes so much that she couldn't see the person behind the light at all. Kill me, I'll wait for you beasts in hell, Ludmila gritted her teeth and said. The light stayed on her face for a few seconds, and a surprising sound rang out in the darkness. Ludmila, why are you here? Su Ming was very surprised. He didn't expect to meet Ludmila here. Hearing this voice, Ludmila was stunned. It was him. When fellow villagers meet, their eyes are filled with tears. After a short family reunion meeting, Su Ming controlled the remaining animals, and Ludmila called the last 3 survivors to climb out of the cage. Don't be afraid, everyone, these are friends of the Russian people, who are here to save us, Ludmila briefly introduced them to comfort the frightened survivors. But I am also a Chinese, Su Ming added, waving his hand. No time to talk more, get in the car. Oh no, hurry up. The only way out of the castle is a heavy iron gate, which is the main gate of the castle. The half-foot-thick iron gate looks more like the gate of a small city than it does. It can usually be opened with the old mechanism of the castle. Nicole had destroyed the mechanism before she left, and it could not be opened by manpower at all. If it cannot be opened by manpower, Su Ming may not be unable to open it. With a loud roar, in the surprised eyes of everyone, the iron gate was slowly lifted up to a gap. But it was far from enough. The veins on Su Ming's forehead burst out, but the gap did not expand, and on the contrary, there was a tendency to fall. Several other people came to help, but they were still powerless. Su Ming opened an elephant energy storage ball, which was the only power-type energy storage ball. Squeak, the iron door made a harsh noise and slowly lifted up, leaving more than half a meter of space from the ground. You go first. Ludmila hesitated for a few seconds, gritted her teeth, and took the survivors and animals out from under the door. You guys come out quickly, Ludmila shouted anxiously outside. Su Ming and Su Meng smiled bitterly at each other. Now the two of them lifted the iron door together. If anyone let go, the iron door would fall down. They didn't dare to move at all, and they couldn't move. At this moment, a shrill roar suddenly sounded in the castle. In the darkness, a mouth opened to the ear, full of rotten teeth, and a 2-meter-tall monster slowly walked towards them. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 800. I'm confused, what the hell is this? Although Su Ming and Su Meng couldn't move while carrying the large iron gate, they could still turn their necks. When they heard heavy footsteps coming from behind, they both looked back subconsciously. In the darkness, a humanoid monster over 2 meters tall. It is said to be humanoid because this guy still looks like a human being. It walks on two legs, but it has no arms. Well, it cannot be said that it has no arms at all. The two fin-like things should be its arms, hanging limply on both sides of the body. The whole body is covered with tangled but messy muscles, as if all the large muscles from a dozen bodybuilding champions were cut off and put together randomly. The scariest thing was that face, which had no human appearance at all, like a large shark that had mutated and festered due to radiation. This thing is obviously not a good thing. Su-ming didn't expect this guy to come over and talk to him about his life ideals. Subconsciously, he passed a mental power. The result was that just like those bats, this monster's mind had been confused and twisted. It was completely no way to communicate. Roar, roar, roar. The monster roared in a low voice, twisting its head nervously and striding towards the door, with a string of faint words hanging from the corner of its mouth, if it still had a mouth. Disgusting blue saliva. This guy was tall and long-legged, and walked very fast. He was soon a few meters away from Su-ming and the others. His eyes, which had lost the whites of their eyes, stared at the duo from the top of the door in an eerie manner. Su-ming gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, I'll just fight if it doesn't work out." He and Su-ming put down the big iron door, kill this guy first, and then think of other ways to get out of trouble. "Beck. Is that you?" At this moment, Ludmila's voice came. She saw the monster through the crack in the door, bent down and shouted at the monster. Hearing Ludmila's voice, the shark monster was obviously stunned and looked at Ludmila. These damn beasts, seeing the former team members turned into such inhuman beings, Ludmila shouted with splitting eyes, "Baker, wake up. Don't hurt them, I will save you." Although she said so, Ludmila knew very well that even if Baker, who had turned into a monster, could leave here alive, he would not be able to return to his human form, and he would not even be able to survive for a few days. Question. During the time she was captured, she saw several tragedies in which experimental subjects mutated after being injected with pharmaceuticals, and then died quickly. Even if they can survive, they will be studied as monsters by the state and imprisoned in the laboratory. Living a life without dignity is definitely not what a mercenary wants. Female bear. Monster Baker spat out a word indistinctly, stopped, and stood more than 1 meter away from Su-ming and Su-ming. The eyes that had lost the whites actually regained a trace of clarity, the pupils shrank slightly, and a faint layer of white appeared around them. "Baker, I will definitely avenge you, I swear." Ludmila gritted her teeth, picked up Su-ming's gun, and aimed at Baker's head bit by bit. As long as he showed signs of attacking, Ludmila he will shoot without hesitation. Although her comrades have a deep love, Ludmila clearly understands how to choose between a comrade who can no longer be saved and 2 living lives. You could say she was cold, you could also say she was rational, but no matter what she chose, the female bear kept the deepest pain to herself. At this moment, Baker suddenly moved and rushed towards the door at extremely high speed. However, to everyone's surprise, he did not attack Su-ming and Su-ming. Instead, he bent down and used his muscular back to push against the door. Like a big sea dog, he got down on all fours to support the crumbling door. Iron gate. Let's go. Baker let out a human roar. At this time, everyone knew what he was going to do. This mutated mercenary was going to use his body to hold up the door and help Su-ming and Su-ming escape. Su-ming's head buzzed and blood rushed to his face. If he and Su-ming left now, Baker would definitely be crushed to death by the gate. Perhaps it was because the weight of the iron gate was too shocking, or perhaps because the injected medicine had not been fully developed, but Baker was actually quite sober at this time. He grinned at Su-ming and Su-ming, revealing a mouthful of rotten teeth. "Let's go, don't act like a mother-in-law." Baker's back was pushed down again, but he raised his head with difficulty and grinned at Su-ming. "If someone must die, let someone with the ability die." Those who seek revenge must live. They didn't know if the mechanism or electronic equipment had been touched. Su Ming and Su Meng felt that the gate in their hands was getting heavier and heavier, and there were faint signs that it might not be able to hold it any longer. The two looked at each other and made up their minds at the same time. Almost at the same time, he made the exact same action, rolled over and rolled out from under the gate. Squeak! Zhongyu began to fall slowly after losing the support of the two people on the gate. Baker yelled under the gate, and his muscles tensed up. In an instant, he pushed the gate upwards a few centimeters, but then there was a sound of bones breaking in his spine, and he was pressed down little by little. Lie down. These unprofessional beasts actually spared me my life, ha ha ha. I really want to see their expressions when they know someone has escaped. What a pity. Baker said with a ferocious smile while spitting out blood. Baker, I swear, I will spend the rest of my life killing all these beasts. Ludmila was going crazy. What are you doing, acting out a tragedy? Su Ming and Su Meng didn't run far after they turned over. The situation was too tense just now. According to the TV routine, Baker must have been crushed to death while trying to save people. But after coming out, Su Ming remembered that it was completely unnecessary. He and Su Meng could continue to hold the iron gate on the other side of the iron gate and let go after Baker came out. Su Meng, hurry up, Su Ming grinned. His hands had already dragged the bottom of the iron gate, his muscles swelled, and he shouted loudly, slightly stopping the iron gate from falling. Soon after, Su Meng's hands also arrived, and the iron gate finally stopped less than half a meter from the ground. Ludmila was stunned, her mouth wide open. Stupid woman, why are you standing there, acting out a tragedy? Pull him out quickly, we can't stand it anymore, Su Ming said with a grin. Oh, oh, oh. Ludmila woke up from her dream and quickly pulled Baker, who had been crushed to death, out from under the door. With a loud bang, the iron gate, which must have weighed tens of thousands of pounds, finally landed again, and the entire ground seemed to shake violently. A large group of animals, 6 survivors and a mutant Baker were gasping for breath outside the castle. A helicopter was shuttling through the mountains and ridges of Romania. In the helicopter, except for the only passenger, Nicole, there was only one pilot left. This was also the only original crew in the castle. If it weren't for keeping him to set up the plane, Nicole might not even leave this person alive. It wasn't because she was worried about being reprimanded by the committee for killing low-authority personnel. Nicole's LV2 authority, which was infinitely close to the core, could still cover it. The bad news of Locke's death made Nicole almost run away. Before leaving, this crazy woman, ostensibly for confidentiality, actually killed most of the members of the castle organization to vent her anger. The remaining pilot immediately became timid and followed all of Nicole's instructions without hesitation. Even though Nicole did not flee Romania, a place of trouble, immediately, but risked being surrounded by government forces to search for the wreckage of the helicopter sent earlier on the route between the two castles, he did not dare to raise any objections. Soon, the helicopter had searched the straight line between the two castles, but found no traces. Keep looking, Nicole said expressionlessly. Completely different from the attitude of other people in the organization towards Locke, there is an inexplicable feeling between Nicole and Locke. From a genetic point of view, Nicole and Locke can be regarded as siblings, and even further, they are two different sides of the same person. Nicole is an illegitimate daughter, and Locke is a test tube baby born from a gene fragment extracted from the same egg. An illegitimate daughter is also a daughter, and a test tube baby, or a test tube baby born from certain gene fragments, can almost be regarded as an irrelevant person in terms of human morality and emotions, at least in the eyes of their father. Therefore, Nicole can become a core member of the organization and enjoy high authority, but Locke can only continue to accept relatively mature genetic modifications during his growth, which is equivalent to an advanced test subject of the organization. But this does not hinder the relationship between Locke and Nicole. In Locke's almost no concept of affection, Nicole is the only one he must obey and protect. Similarly, in Nicole's cold and ruthless character, Locke may be the only one with a little humanity. Follow this river to find it? If I remember correctly, this river passes through Abic Castle. Nicole gave the order expressionlessly. Even if Locke died, she would find his body and then avenge him. The helicopter turned around and flew along the turbulent river. Sure enough, at a fork in the river, a stranded body was found. It was the security guard of the castle. Not long after, the wreckage of the helicopter was found in the tributary. Miss Nicole, there seems to be something abnormal ahead. Two brown bears stood in the shallow water, seemingly gnawing at something. Nicole could tell at a glance that it was a humanoid creature that had been bitten to a bloody mess. Damn it, it's Locke. Nicole picked up the rifle without hesitation and fired 3 shots twice on the plane. The 2 brown bears were shot in the head and fell into the water with a wail. The blood dyed the water red. The helicopter slowly landed at the lake. Nicole jumped off the plane and saw that Locke's back was rotten beyond recognition. In some places, the spine was even exposed. The flesh on one thigh was almost eaten away. Locke, are you still alive? Nicole knew how strong Locke's ability to survive was. Holding the last glimmer of hope, she trembled and touched Locke's carotid artery. Strangely enough, Locke, who had been motionless, suddenly trembled with a little finger the moment Nicole touched him.